Hey everyone, Jared here, and today I'm going to show you how I have started the process of leveling my field using my Harley Rake. But before we get started with the actual footage from me doing that, I'd like to step back and just tell you a real quick story as to what made me think this would even work. So at my parents' farm, they have several acres under pasture that was used for horses. This pasture was separated by fence lines that would go across and create separate areas for the horses. My father removed one of these fence lines and then had the complaint that when he used his bush hog, his rotary cutter, and ran through the fence, he would hit a pretty good bump where this fence line used to be. And that come from years or decades of just organic material blowing against the fence, dirt being kicked up to there by the horses as they ran towards it. But like I said, just ended up creating kind of a pretty severe speed bump. So he asked if we could do something to smooth it out. We just briefly discussed normal options you hear people talk about, like box blades, stuff like that. But in my opinion, I do not like using those on things that have vegetation because all they do is cut, peel, leave clods, and now you're trying to drag clods around, and that just doesn't make for very good leveling. So we were going to rototill it and then drag it, smooth it all out, and reseed it. But then I thought, why not use my Harley Rake? Let's try that and see what that would do. So we went out and set the tractor up to go. I ran inline with the fence row and then started going just all over different directions across this fence line, not cutting terribly deep. And what we ended up finding was pretty surprising to me is that the carbide nubs on the Harley Rake would actually go down and cut out some of that dirt, but not completely remove all the vegetation. And when we were done, we had a pretty nice level area, but without removing all of the vegetation. So we didn't have to worry about erosion. We did not even reseed it. It turned out really good. Now, if you have, a really high hump, then there's going to be no way to cut that out, right, and still leave vegetation. But this worked well enough that we cut enough dirt out that it feathered into the sides. And even though it may not be perfect, he said that he's super happy with it and it's good enough for him. When we got done running the Harley Rake over that, we obviously kicked up, almost like it was dethatching, kicked up a lot of longer strings of grass. And even if we did dig a little bit and brought up clods, the nice thing about the Harley Rake is it knocks all the dirt off of that and just leaves the grass behind. So after we were done, he ran his finish mower over it. That way he could just kind of spread all the grass out so it didn't stay clumped. And he could tell right away that it did a good job and felt good. So he asked me if I would mind going down to another area that did not have a fence line, but it was a wet area. And he knew that when he ran the larger tractors down there with the larger rotary cutter, that he left ruts. And now that he's mowing it with his smaller tractor, a 40 horse with a finish mower, he would like that to be a little smoother. So I went down there, did the same thing, just kind of went different directions. And when you leave a rut, you usually have kind of some higher peaks on the sides before they level out. It did just such a good, amazing job. Just knocked kind of those peaks off, dropped the dirt into the low spots, and made it usable, made it drivable to where you did not feel like you were driving over, seriously steep speed bumps or ruts or anything like that, to where it was jarring you, hurting the tractor, hurting your back, anything like that. Did a really good job. So I thought, why not try to do that to my field? Now, I don't have a whole lot of ruts, but I did have some areas that needed some attention. So if you hopefully watched some of my other videos, you saw that I had quite a few field tile blowouts. So I had to dig a bunch of holes in my field and repair old clay field tile. But I also had some areas that were washed out, low-lying, places that just did jar you pretty good if you hit them just right. And as well as I had a small pile of dirt out there that I had piled there from cutting out my driveway, making my driveway wider. So I thought, let's spread that dirt around, drop it into low spots, and then let's just run the Harley Rake over everything. This will clean up the areas where I had to dig to fix the field tile. This will spread the dirt out that I have piled, and it will help level out anywhere there's bumps, ground moles, all kinds of stuff out there creating havoc. It'll cut stuff like that down. It'll take the dirt, it'll drop it into low spots. And even though it's not going to be smooth like a football field, it's still going to be a large improvement over what I had. So we're going to get into the footage. I'll do a little bit of voiceover during this so I can talk to you and tell you what I'm doing. But otherwise, let's go watch the tractor and Harley Rake run. So to start off here, I'm going to be doing nothing special but getting rid of some of this dirt in a pile and spreading it into lower areas in the field. These may be areas where I had to dig up and fix a field tile, or could just be a low-level swale. Or I also had an area that had a footer drain from way up by the house that came out through the field that was also low-lying. So I'm just going to take this dirt and we're just going to spread it around the field. Like this area up here, this is an area I had dug out, so this is going to get a little bit of extra dirt. I really wish I could give you guys a better visualization about how bouncy and bumpy this is, but unfortunately, or fortunately, the GoPro does a pretty darn good job of stabilizing the video. And once again, a couple more areas that were dug up. That area shooting off diagonally there to the right is a really long swale. And then this area I'm driving over right here is the footer drain that's coming from the house. So there used to be a piece of black tile that stuck up here and constantly ran water. Well, I shouldn't say constantly, it ran water a lot, especially obviously when it rained. Now, the best I can figure is that it had to be a footer drain. It did not make any sense for that to be field tile. Every single piece of field tile in this field is all clay. So why was there a piece of black plastic just sticking out? As well as the plastic was perforated. It was not solid. So what I end up doing is I dug it back quite a ways and then cut it off, replaced it with solid, and then dug out until I met a field tile and tied it in there so it goes all the way to the ditch now. Now, what I've done in order to make it easy for me to adjust the Harley Rake to keep it from digging or to make it dig even more is I set the wheels, which are adjustable, to a set height that put the Harley Rake at a normal level position with it just barely touching the ground or just clearing the ground. Then what I do if I want to dig or if I need to go down a little bit more, I retract my top link a little bit, and this will tilt the Harley Rake down and put it closer to the ground and then allow it to dig more. If I need to lift it up, if it's digging too much, then I just extend my top link and rock it back, and which then takes the carbide drum and rocks it away from the earth a little bit. And what's nice about adjusting it this way is that I can, at the end of a row, I can lift up with my 3-point, and when I'm ready to get back down, I just drop it. I'm not adjusting the height with my 3-point. The Harley Rake is always riding on the wheels, and the adjustment is done with just the top link. You're going to notice in the video that there are places where I do peel away all of the vegetation. And that's just because the mound sat up too high, and there was no other way to get everything level without removing all of that. So even though earlier in the video I was talking about removing dirt and leaving vegetation behind, that's not going to happen throughout the entire field. So I just wanted to make sure I made that clear. Overall, and you're going to see here like now, I'm doing just a little bit of dirt or just the grass, but as I get to places that are too high, I'm going to dig a little bit more, and that's okay. I mean, that's just the nature of leveling everything out. But the point is that I'm able to leave the vast majority of the grass alive and still standing in this field, so I don't have to deal with reseeding the entire area. I don't have to deal with erosion. I don't have to deal with a big muddy mess. So yes, I do have spots where it became completely bare, but that's okay. I'm willing to deal with that. Here you can kind of see my paths to the left. And this is where I'm making diagonal paths through my field. So I'm just kind of just like mowing, just stepping over a little bit and overlapping just a smidge and just going at about a 45-degree angle. Now I end up switching this around and going in different directions, as well as just driving around in circles and hitting other spots at different angles to make sure the dirt gets brought into the low level areas from the higher level areas by attacking it from all the way around. And I'm sure you're probably thinking as you are watching this that you're like, wow, man, that really does not look smooth at all. Look at all those bumps, those humps, those clods. Well, those aren't clods, believe it or not. Those are just piles of tufts of grass. The dirt's been knocked off of them. It's just grass that's been either dethatched and brought up from the field, or it is grass that maybe was cut and then got all the dirt knocked off. But when I end up taking the finish mower over all of it and knocking it out, blowing it out, it looks just tremendously better. So don't let this picture fool you. It is not as bumpy and clod looking as it appears. If you've never ran a Harley Rake on the 3-pointer tractor, I would highly recommend you try to find one and rent one. They are amazing, amazing implements, and I am so happy that I was able to find this one for a very reasonable price, even though it's used and a little older. It was in great shape. It was owned by an older gentleman. It was kept indoors its entire life, and like I said, you wouldn't even be able to tell it's as old as what it really is by the shape. But it is probably one of my favorite implements that I've purchased and has been worth every penny. It is so versatile. It's amazing what you can do with this, and once again, I would highly recommend you try to rent one at some point in time. So through here, hopefully you can see what I was talking about earlier. The Harley Rake is just it's just kicking that grass in front of it. So it's knocking all the dirt off and letting the dirt fall into low spots and making sure that none of the clods remain. It's breaking everything apart completely. This ended up working so well that I'm seriously considering doing this exact same thing to my yard this fall. I'd like to do it, sometime in late fall. That way we are hopefully no longer mowing and at the point that I can plant grass seed and have everything in the ground ready to go for the following spring. So I absolutely love this view, but I will tell you it scared me to death. Not because I was afraid for me, but I thought, man, if my expensive GoPro falls off the bottom of the hitch of my tractor, it is going to get destroyed. There is no way it's going to survive against the carbide nubs of the drum. Yeah, I know GoPros are action cams and they're built pretty tough, but they're still not going to be any match for a Harley Rake. You may also notice here that if you look to the side of the drums, I have put on the deflectors, keepers, whatever you'd like to call them, that keeps the material from spreading out. I did not use those to start with. I didn't think I really needed it, but then I started to notice that quite a bit of the material is just flowing to the outside. It wasn't keeping it all in. So I put those on, which are adjustable in two positions. They can go completely straight forward, or they can flare out a little bit. So I have them right now flared out a little bit so they keep the material in and really reduce the chance of the material flowing around outside and not letting it get hit by the drum. Another thing this view shows is it lets you see what the Harley Rake does with rocks, specifically larger rocks. It's kicking them forward. The Harley Rake, if I were to bury it down a little further and actually make sure it's cutting more, it would completely windrow and keep these rocks in front of it. It's really good for helping to remove a lot of the rocks out of a yard. It's not going to be as good as a rock hound, but it still works pretty darn good. And what I would do is at the end of a row, I would usually pick up the Harley Rake. That way I could leave all the rocks at the end of a row, and then I went back later on and gathered most of those up. And once again, through here you're going to see those big mounds and piles, and it looks horrible, but that is all grass, I promise you. Those are not clods at all. So this field is about 2 acres or so, and it took me several hours to do, just because there were times where I was going a little slower than others to try to figure out where I wanted the Harley Rake to be as far as elevation, as well as there was quite a bit of it that I went over more than once. So it took me longer than it would take somebody to mow 2 acres, since I was going over a lot of it more than once. But overall, I did all of this in less than a day. And here you can see when I really bury the drum, not slowing down because it's dragging the tractor as much as I don't want it to lift up and then leave humps. I want to give it time to chew in, so that's why I slowed down there. And look at that nice big pile of fluffed up dirt that is staying in front of the Harley Rake that is dropping down into all the low spots. So you can see why this works so well at leveling everything out. And then finally, here's a few pictures of when it's all done. So this is just a picture I took with the tractor sitting out there in the middle of the field. And here's a picture from another angle showing an area that was previously dug out and had a pretty big bare spot. So this really shows how well this thing leveled out. And this picture is showing right over top of where that dirt mound used to be. So you can see that it's gone, it's leveled out, and the rest of the area around it just looks great. And then this is what I use for the final step. This is my 6-foot finish mower on the back of my same tractor. Just getting ready to go over everything and just mow the big piles of grass and just blow them out and level everything. And hopefully you can see in these pictures how level everything is. This one was taken even though the tractor's in the pick. It was taken after I mowed it, so you don't see those big clumps anymore. And look at this picture. I mean, that field is it's just beautiful. Everything is spread way out. It's nice and level. I could probably hit it again here in a year or so if I wanted to, if I still find more spots, since I didn't want to dig too much the first time around. But overall, I think it turned out really well. Once again, everybody, thank you for sticking around, watching the video. I would greatly appreciate your input, so please stop down in the comments, drop me a line, let me know what you think. And then do me a favor, and if you like the video, hit the thumbs up, let me know you like it, subscribe, and hit the bell notification to be notified of upcoming videos. And as always, have a great rest of your day.